To lead us on this, attorney at law from MME Legal and a leading visionary in the field. Let's hear it for Daniel Heyman.
Okay, may I ask the panelists here to sit down as well? I wish it was a wrestling match. A wrestling match is over after, I don't know what, 15 minutes or a few times 3 minutes. This one is taking years, and I've lost my hair in the process. So my name is Daniel Heyman. I'm a lawyer from Switzerland, previous commodities trader. I'm the co-founder of the International Cannabis Bar Association Europe chapter, together with Kai, another lawyer colleague of mine. And I do a lot of corporate work and also product regulatory, specifically in the cannabis industry. So I'm quite excited to have a few super interesting people with me here, and I will let them make their introductions. Gasper, Lisa, Frederick, and Attia. Maybe Attia, you can take it away. Maybe 1-2 minute introduction, and then we go in this direction.
Hi there, everybody. My name is Attia Feroz. I'm the founder of AgCan Consultancy, which is a consulting firm that offers operations, post-harvest, quality assurance, and tissue culture consulting, specializing in emerging markets all over the world. I'm also the founder of the International Cannabis Quality Standards Association, which is a group that was formed earlier this year to bring together industry stakeholders and thought leaders and develop industry best practice guides, as well as provide information and consultation services to regulators and policymakers.
Hello, my name is Frederick Borgslav. Apparently, unless what is written there, I'm a lawyer from Berlin. As an entrepreneur, I took part in the first tender, 2017, then in the second tender, and we applied with a company we created for import and wholesale license. And since a couple of years, we are offering our services to clients from especially Israel, Africa, and French. Yeah.
Good, thank you.
Hi, my name is Lisa Haag. I'm the CEO and founder of MG Universe GmbH. We are a strategic consulting company, but we're also operating our own projects. You guys maybe know Krautinvest.de, B2B magazine for the German cannabis industry and beyond. But I'm also part of the board of the German industry representation, der Branchenverband der Cannabiswirtschaft, where you can find us outside in the exhibition hall if you want to know anything about lobby work in Germany.
Yeah, hi, I'm Gasper. I'm the Chief Compliance Officer for the Tolman Group and a licensed attorney. So my experience with cannabis first came as my job as an attorney, as a defense attorney. But then I went into the cannabis industry like a year and a half, 2 years ago. So I'm pretty new to this, still learning. And the Tolman Group now, basically what we're doing is we're connecting different participants in this industry. I find it very interesting. I learn something new every day, and I expect to do it even today.
You know, we say time working in the cannabis industry is like dog years. So you've been in the industry for a while now. I've seen you here a few times.
Feels like that.
Yeah, exactly. All right, we're going to talk today about the challenges faced by the cannabis industry, the biggest regulatory challenges, the relationship between the regulators and the regulated in the cannabis industry. I would like to address you guys with the first question. What are the biggest challenges in this industry that you face? Whoever wants to take it up first.
Maybe I do. I mean, from what I learned is that we don't have a constant, especially in Germany where we have a federal system, all the regulators more or less apply the rules in a different way. Just to give you a little example. We have two clients, both of them from Israel, both of them they want to obtain EU GMP, so we need an audit. The regulator from Bavaria allows an online audit for obvious reasons, and the other one, we are struggling with the regulator. We try to argue, well, there's an MAR. The Israeli GMP is basically way more harder than the European one. And more or less we're stuck. So, I mean, and I don't know when the political situation in Israel will be better, and the clients want that early. Yeah, they're eager to obtain EU GMP, and to be able to market their product.
That's super interesting, but you're already going really quite into the specifics.
Yeah.
That's what I asked. But let's start a bit more in the meta field, because essentially there's one overarching theme on the highest level, which is the narcotic, the Staatsverträge.
Yeah.
Okay, basically that's where it starts. The international conventions. Maybe you can speak about that and why the single convention may be one of the biggest impediments to a harmonized framework?
Well, I'm saying that for a very long time, that for us as the cannabis industry, the single convention is actually a big trade barrier that is limiting us because of the status of the flower and the resin as a narcotic drug. That has a lot of implications. It also, to a certain degree, provides the framework. But I mean, that's not only the only aspect in there, that's the biggest global aspect. But again, I also see a lot of limitations and restrictions through the appropriate marketing category. It's something that I call category appropriate marketing, so that like really the companies understand what category their ingredient relates to. And I mean, here the focus is really more on those things like the cannabis flower and the resin, but there are way other areas, like also in construction or in developing novel cellular-based solutions that are highly limited through that barrier.
So one of the barriers, really, I would say, in the single convention is that it only allows cross-border cooperation in the fields of scientific research and in the medical space. And it doesn't open up anything for the recreational space, right? That, I would say, is like the first level of challenge that we have.
For sure.
And also, we as members of European Union, I mean, you're a bit different from Switzerland. Besides, because besides the UN Convention, we also have the European legislations. And as we all know, the UN, they have no punitive approach towards countries who would be in breach, while the European Commission, they have quite severe punishes that could be inflicted on the member states that would break it. So for European member states, that's an additional issue. I think as a European state, we would have it hard to allow ourselves to do, for example, like what Canada did or what some other countries did, because the European Commissions, like they had experience in Germany when they first came to the European Commission and asked, could we legalize for recreational use? And they were told, quite frankly, no, you cannot, we will sue you in front of the court.
Okay, so enforcement is a big issue, but also what you addressed really is the interpretation of what cannabis means, the definition in the single convention, which really does not distinguish, because the single convention was created at the time where people have not discovered THC yet. And it actually comprises everything that's derived from the cannabis plant and from the fruiting tops and so on. And these definitions, do you think the interpretation of these definitions, is that something universal, or is it something where you have an individual interpretation in each jurisdiction?
Yeah, I'd say that every single country comes at cannabis with usually not enough information. And so their understanding of the different plant components and what they contain and what the potential uses of them is very different. So I was just helping one of my clients go through the narcotics licensing in Switzerland, and then we had a meeting with the regulators, and they said, okay, so we want you to destroy all of the cannabis waste that has THC in it. And I said, THC or THCA? And they just stared at me, and they said, what do you mean? I said, well, the leaves and the stalks don't have THC inside of them. We're at a certain level. So what are we going with? I mean, your rule is anything below 1% THC is hemp material, CBD material. So how do you want to do this? And they were just completely lost on, they didn't understand that it's not everything is consistent throughout the entire plant. So what we ended up having a chat with them about is saying, okay, look, how about when we do our first few rounds of destruction, we'll actually do an HPLC analysis for the level of THC, THCA in the different types of waste matter. And if we can prove to you that it's below the threshold, can we just throw it in the regular garbage? And they were like, okay, yeah, that seems reasonable. But you have to come up with these solutions yourself. Otherwise, you're paying, we have to do pay for our destruction in Switzerland. So you're paying a lot of extra money to haul off product that could just go in the regular waste if you don't come up with these solutions to not challenge the regulators, but I guess to help inform them on, the knowledge of the plant that we have as industry experts.
Absolutely, and on top of that, we also have very different regulations depending on which product regulatory category we put a product in. And in Switzerland, for example, where I'm from, cannabis with a THC content of up to 1% is not considered a narcotic drug. That's already not harmonized, because in Europe it's 0.3%. We have other jurisdictions within Europe that accept up to 0.6%. It's quite a wide area. And if I may address something in Switzerland now that's interesting, it's the first time that the Swiss Medic and Federal Office of Public Health has put out an information that in the field of cosmetics regulation, for example, anything that goes up to 1% is not considered a narcotic drug. There was a big issue about whether THC could be, whether cosmetic products could entail or have a component of THC at all, because there's a prohibited narcotic regulation in cosmetics, and now the regulator actually made clear up to 1% is more or less fine. We'll see how that pans out in enforcement, but that's where we are today in Switzerland.
If I can just jump in, we have a very interesting situation in Slovenia with hemp.
Yeah.
We're like most of European countries, up to 0.3, it's supposed to be hemp. But the position of our Supreme Court is that on the list of illicit drugs in Slovenia is cannabis as a plant. So it doesn't matter if it's 0.2, 0.3. If you cultivate it, it's a criminal offense, unless you have a license from the Ministry of Agriculture. If you don't have it and you cultivate hemp, it's a criminal offense, regardless of what the THC level is. On the other hand, we have the National Institute of Health, who says, no, industrial hemp is legal. You can grow it, you can do everything. So not even the regulators and the courts are on the same page here.
Sometimes also the regulator just tells you to sue them because they just can't change the situation by themselves. So that's the way we have to go, via courts.
Yeah, and as we know, that's something that's difficult to afford for many companies, and also takes a lot of time. And I think the reason we came to this place in Switzerland is because it's already been 3 years that also myself have been litigating these cases, but it's 3 years on that they've realized that they can't just take the definition of the single convention, but actually have to take a specific interpretation into account. Maybe you can speak about your experiences now. We spoke on a meta level, maybe we take it a bit more down to a country level. What's your experience in Germany with those regional differences? Can you dive a bit into more detail there?
It depends on really on the local regulator. If you look into Northern Westphalia, they're pretty open-minded. Bavaria as well, even though that for the upcoming recreational market, we see that Bavaria will be a hellhole, more or less. They already put on an executive order allowing people to be fined if they smoke with youngsters, minors, I mean. So at the given moment, there's no, let's say, a red line in between the regulators, whether you're, and I'm assuming it's going to be the same way for recreational market as well as or the medical market in general, so there's no red line. More or less it's, you have to have experience where you apply for your medical license, import or wholesale. And I'm assuming it's going to be the same thing for cannabis clubs, especially for the production sites. Maybe you've heard that Mr. Lauterbach, that's our health minister, he issued I don't know what to call it. It's like a protocol before the election on the second chamber, in which he said, for the CSC, for the cannabis clubs we represent, that pooling up production sites is not allowed. But yeah, that changes a lot in the whole economic view, even though I'm not allowed to say that.
Is that a binding order that was issued, or what's the legal nature of that?
We don't know. This has never been done before.
No, but maybe I can say something in that regard. Like, we've had these discussions, and we have a couple of members in our industry association who also want to pursue that model. So now we have that limitation. It's still in the formulation, as it said, it's unclear how many clubs can be in one location to not be considered many. So it's still, there may be some clubs together in one spot, but if too many are 10 or 15 is unclear, so we have to see how this all rolls out. Yeah, but I think like one point that is very important here to show is that we just have defragmented regulations across the globe. So it is also up to us if we want to have more safety in acting and safety in how we can make transnational trade. We all need to lobby more for more harmonized rules and regulations. Or the thing that you just said with the CBD cosmetics in Switzerland, we have the same issue here where some entrepreneurs from Hamburg have been facing. They just did regular CBD oil, yeah, and as a cosmetic, and they've been facing charges for narcotics trades. So those kind of things come from the single convention. So I'll stick with my statement that we all need to lobby to get cannabis out of the single convention, because otherwise we'll be stuck with this.
Yeah, but we do know that's going to be a long shot, and it's going to take many years until this will be implemented.
But now there's movement, and the regulators start to get interested in these kind of topics. They want to create solutions. Before that, it was just like cannabis, no. Yeah. Now, all for a sudden, this huge, massive economy pops up, and there's a willingness to create new regulations or to have standards for audits. I mean, that's also potentially a lot of your work, Atia, talking with the regulators about just explaining how this is possible, explaining cannabis to them because they have no clue.
Yeah, it's actually really shocking, like, because I work in so many different markets, the whole reason I started the association is I would just see things that were written in regulations or things that my clients had to adhere to that just made absolutely no sense. You know, deciding that every 5 or 15 pounds of finished product is its own individual batch. There's no reason to do that, but they're just, you know, racking up millions of dollars in testing fees. Like you mentioned too, even with having clients in Switzerland wanting to sell CBD into Germany, we're doing these really dangerous chemical washdowns. It's making the product garbage, to be honest, and they're respraying it with a terpene spray and they're pumping it into Germany. If they could just come to an understanding of the same level of a THC limit for the product to move freely across even just Europe alone, that would be great. So we need to have more of this international harmonization, because I think that as an industry, we need to come together and unify a little bit more. I move product around the world all the time, and it's always this weird balancing act. I mean, even when we move product out of Switzerland that's over 0.6, 0.7, that's immediately a narcotic in other countries, right? So there needs to be this kind of assistance, I think, for the regulators. And Lisa's totally right. Like, a lot of them weren't open to any information, really. And as countries have come online, and a lot of them have made mistakes, or they've kind of made missteps, I would say, they're now a lot more open for these conversations and these discussions and saying, okay, maybe we don't know what we're doing. Maybe it's a bit more complex than we thought. You know, where can we get some guidance?
We feel the same in Switzerland, to be honest. It was a very difficult conversation in the beginning, but it's also understandable because to some extent we're talking about some tension between illicit markets where operators had to learn to find the path of least resistance for marketability, right? And now suddenly markets are opening up, but to a very small degree and in a very complex manner. And suddenly you have to take into account various product regulatory fields like cosmetics regulation, foodstuffs regulation, chemical regulation, therapeutic product act regulation, and they don't understand the context and they just bring products to market. And this creates a lot of tension and frustration on the side of the authorities, and understandably a little bit an attitude of resistance. Yes, Lisa.
Maybe also interesting for Switzerland particularly because you had that CBD, the massive CBD boom. Yeah, and there were all these producers coming up. Like all of a sudden, there's a massive oversupply. Yeah. I mean, some of that cannabis definitely also went into, let's say, unregulated or even illicit value chains from that because it was not properly tracked and there were no rules to keep the product in the legal market. So that is definitely something that I think should be like on our list of priorities to also build value chains where the product stays in the value chain and does not migrate anywhere at some point. And then you have other issues popping up through that, and then the regulator will be unhappy again. So it's also like that we need to find some solutions and make this more tangible, more traceable, and make it like so it's transparent and
Just to make this a bit more specific, what you're speaking about is actually
CBD flower.
being sold into the illicit market because CBD flower is relatively cheap versus THC, and then it's simply sprayed with synthetic cannabinoids or even spice, and then distributed in the market. And there's a lot of product from Switzerland that actually ends up in the black market. It's an open secret, and that's very harmful for the conversation with the regulator. Can you guys tell me a little bit how is this conversation with the regulator? When you say you meet with the regulator, are the barriers very high? Do you get the meetings easily? How does it work in Slovenia?
Well, in Slovenia, it might be a bit easier because we're a small country, so it's kind of easier to get in touch with them. And the approach that we took is, up until like 8-9 months ago, the situation was really bad. I mean, everything was banned, and there was no understanding on the side of the regulator, also due to the fact that, as we basically all mentioned, they didn't know much about it. And so in September, we said, okay, let's organize a conference, actually with the help of ICBC, Science and Technology. And we invited a lot of scientists and a lot of politicians, also the members of the government came, and we showed them, look, cannabis is not just people smoking on the streets, it's not just stoneheads, it's a whole industry behind it, and not just medical, a lot of it. And this was kind of the first step. So a couple of months later, with the help of the Cancer Patient Society, we organized an event in our National Assembly, or now in the National Council. And it helped, which would be like the Bundesrat.
Alex shared a few of those pictures on LinkedIn, so we saw that. Yeah, it's great.
So, and it was, I mean, even for me, it was a bit surprising that in such short few months, we managed to get basically to the parliament, and it helped. And now they're willing to listen. And I'm having a meeting next week with the government to talk about a new bill and everything. So things are moving forward. And as I said, we took the approach of showing them what cannabis can be.
So I think this is a very interesting framework, and maybe it can be implanted in other jurisdictions. In Switzerland, I feel, and in other European countries, the regulators have understood that the current framework of narcotics regulation has failed, and even addiction organizations and so on are all advocating for an opening of the market for other frameworks. So our experience is also they're very happy to listen, and we have the pilot projects now going on. What I'm interested in, because we don't have much time left, and I want to leave some time for a few questions as well. Attia, you're in one of the most, you live in Thailand now, which is an interesting market. I've been there recently, and cannabis is just omnipresent. It's an absolute madness. Maybe you can give us a little bit of insights from your experiences, what's happening there.
Yeah, I mean, I actually moved to Thailand specifically from Canada because I had been kind of splitting my time between Canada and Europe for the past few years. What Thailand has done, no other country will ever do again. No other country will say, just do whatever you want and we'll see what happens for cannabis. So I wanted to go down and kind of see it up close and personal, and it's quite wild. There's 6,000 dispensaries, there's no enforcement, no one's really coming around. The products that they do have a small law saying are illegal are all available in the stores. There's no supply chain tracking, there's no traceability. So there are a lot of really fantastic operators, especially the clients that I work with, that are pushing forward, and they're doing a lot of self-regulation, and they're trying to export, of course, so they're trying to adhere to international standards or get GMP or at least GACP. So there's people there that are, making those changes themselves, but the government's really lagged behind on that, and they're not really well informed on what they need to do. So they're now trying to kind of reverse a little bit. And so what we've heard is that they want to basically make recreational no longer allowed and switch to medical. Now, when we say switch to medical, I mean, I think maybe a few months ago that news came out and everyone was like, are you moving out of Thailand? Like, are you leaving? Everybody on the ground is just still working. Nobody has stopped. Everyone's expanding their facilities. Everyone's continuing. It's a huge revenue stream. No government really tends to say, fine, get rid of the revenue. So
is cannabis taxed? Are there taxes?
Not as much as it should be, because they don't have supply chain traceability, right? So they don't really know how much each producer is making. They don't really know how much is going into different areas. So I think they do taxing on some things, but not enough.
From the INCB requirements, also they should need to know know that.
Yeah.
Or isn't that like a requirement?
For what, sorry?
That you document how much cannabis you're producing for the International Narcotics Control Board?
Yes. You're
Should
supposed
be
to, but as
reporting,
you, look, we've seen in Canada, we've seen the world doesn't end if you don't comply.
I'm too German for that, so also.
Yeah, maybe we need more chutzpah, we call it, right? To actually go and do some, and push the barriers. I think we have a few minutes left. Maybe we can take some questions from the audience.
Thank you. I'm Martin from SGS. We are a testing house. So I have a question. As I understand, the single convention of narcotic drugs is a major issue for developing the future business of cannabis worldwide. So, and I understand that 2 countries in the world legalize cannabis already, like Canada or Uruguay. Do you have any issue? Do you ever heard that there's criminal proceedings happens against these countries because they actively work against the UN Single Convention? And if Switzerland has these trials in the moment, and if Switzerland could be the next country to make it legalized, so it will be the 3rd country if you legalize it completely like Canada or Uruguay. So you will be the 3rd country maybe, or what I heard yesterday, Czech Republic, all in, means also that there are more and more countries going in this direction. So would this be a nice open discussion point to discuss with authorities worldwide to think about the change of the UN Single Convention of Narcotic Drugs?
Anyone wants to answer that one?
I mean, you're the lawyer, yeah. So, but
Well, there hasn't been any enforcement, really.
warning letters, I think there have been.
Sorry?
Warning letters. Canada
warning
got warning
letters.
letters, and
Warning
Uruguay got a
letters.
warning letter also.
And yeah.
Yeah.
But the
Two
UN
warning letters, yeah.
But the UN can't fine anyone, it can't fine a country bailing out or breaking the UN convention.
And
So-
warning letters are sweet.
Yeah, but as Gaspar said before, like the bigger risk here in Europe is to get like fines for breaching European law, and it's not necessarily the single convention, but nevertheless, it's the law that is governing many of our processes. So it's something that needs to be changed. That may be through inter se modification, but again, also these are like these processes take time. But in best case, we should all keep on lobbying to remove cannabis from the single convention.
So the legal pressure more comes from Brussels, but we can neglect New York, but the pressure comes from Brussels. They can find the countries, they can find them big time, and
Nevertheless, there's still some gaps in interpretation, also in scholarly writings, as to how far does the single convention go? Is there a
Let's be
possibility?
very blunt here. It's 2 countries who are keeping us in the single convention in cannabis, China and Russia.
Correct.
Yeah, so as long as that is not changing, and as long as there is no movement there, so that's will be a blockage.
More questions?
Maybe I can. Is there? Oh, sorry.
Hi, thank you. With the global markets opening up, do you think it's possible that countries signed on to the UN Single Convention could be forced to withdraw from the treaty if the voters of those respective countries applied specific political pressure?
There is various ways on how you could potentially circumvent the problems that you have with the single convention. Getting out of the single convention obviously is very challenging because it does not only affect cannabis, it affects all kinds of medicines and medical products. So this is not really, there's been discussions in Germany maybe getting out of the single convention and then re-entering after with an exception. That's a possibility. There's possibilities to do inter se modifications between various countries, but that's a conversation honestly for a whole different panel or 5 panels. There are potential options, but they're all very challenging. And the interest to really get out of the single convention is very low, and I don't think that's a very realistic scenario. It's rather breach it and live with the warning letters.
So maybe I can add a question if there's no more question. What's about the Bolivian approach when Bolivia they re-legalized the coca plant, and they left the single convention and re-entered, and that worked out in that case. So is that not would that be a solution for Germany?
That's an interesting question, actually, Micha, because that's for the traditional use of coca, yeah, and that is also something that is super interesting for global national trade. We have some countries of original origin for traditional cannabis products, like, for example, Moroccan hash, yeah. So that is a typical traditional product made of cannabis, and the coca regulation that Micha mentions, they are really for the traditional use in the culture.
I would like to answer also. I think it is a viable potential avenue, because it's unlikely that if Germany would really take the step and get out of the convention, that they wouldn't be let back in just because they're actually bracketing out cannabis from the narcotics list.
Thank you.
If we have no further questions, well, I would like to thank the panel for this conversation. Could obviously have been much longer, and we're still around if you have any questions. So thank you very much, guys.
Let's hear it again. Very informative. Thank you. Thank you very much.